Good morning, everyone, and welcome to those of you who have just joined us. Thank you for joining this online opener session with the Arden and the Performing Arts team. Today's session will be led with Rob and Andrew. They're going to give you a little bit of information about what to expect in September. If you have any questions throughout the session, please just use the Q&A box to the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll be taking questions towards the end of the session. I'm now going to hand over to Rob, who's going to kick things off. Hi, Rob.
Hi everyone, my name's Rob and I'm head of school at the Arden. So I'm looking forward to meeting you if you're coming in September, but I'll also give you an overall of all of our course provision. And I just want to introduce you to my colleague Andrew as well.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm the deputy head of the Arden. I also am course leader for the vocal studies and performance course.
Thanks, Andrew. So we're here to answer any questions you've got about September, but I'm just conscious as well, we've got students who are looking to apply to us this year. So I'm going to just give an overview of the school and everything that we do here. So if you haven't been to the Arden, this is our campus. It's Nichols campus, and it's a listed Victorian building. It's a wonderful building that all of our rehearsal studios are in. The Arden is a drama school, and it was established in the early 90s in association with the Royal Exchange, and it's recognised nationally as the Arden and internationally as the Arden School of Theatre. It was one of the first institutions to offer degrees in vocational theatre, and we now offer 6 pathways of vocational study. I'm just going to clarify a few things because we have a lot of terms. We've got the Arden, we've also got UCEN, and we've got the LTE group, and we all fall under the same group. So the LTE group is the sort of overarching organisation that's over loads of different organisations, including UCEN, the Manchester College, Manchester Online Learning, and so on. And within that is UCEN Manchester, and the Arden sits within UCEN Manchester. So it's technically a department within UCEN Manchester, which is a higher education provider of loads of different things, including a film school, the Arden, obviously. We've got a fantastic special effects and media and makeup course as well, which is great because it means that the Arden students can collaborate with the film school students, for instance, or the media and makeup students. So it's a really good fit. And these are our accreditations. So we're accredited by Spotlight, which is the casting directory. So once you leave and enter the industry, you will become a graduate member of Spotlight, which is where you'll get all of your audition information. Essentially, it's the platform for professional actors, and they approve our courses. So in order to do that, we have to meet certain criteria about our training. We're also members of Equity, obviously the Actors Union, and our courses are validated by Sheffield Hallam University for our degrees, and Pearson for our HNCs and HNDs. And we're also what's known as TEF Silver, which is an accreditation given to universities, and that's to do with our quality and of provision and our quality processes. So we've got 5 3-year undergraduate courses. So we've got Acting for Live and Recorded Media, so that's your traditional acting course. From 2021, we're actually just going to rename that acting because the title, I think, was confusing a few people. They thought they might be doing sort of, behind the scenes, filmmaking and stuff like that as well. So it's exactly the same course, but from 2021, we're looking to rename that course BA Hons Acting. And we've also got Dance and Performance, Musical Theatre, Theatre and Performance, which is about film. It's not about film. Sorry, it's about theatre making and about devising and creating your own theatre. Sorry, I've just spotted a typo in my dance and performance there. Apologies. Vocal studies and performance, and that is if you want to specialise in being a vocalist that has a portfolio of different skills, from musical theatre but to contemporary singing, songwriting. We also do cover some studio work in that as well. So it's it's a course purely for vocalists who want to go into that field. This year, we're launching an H&D in technical theatre. So if you've got any friends who are interested in working behind the scenes, so in the lighting department, for instance, or the sound, we'd really love to hear from them this year, because we envisage that to be a really great course where those students can collaborate on all of the above courses, really. And we've also got 3 one-year courses, and these are sort of fast-track courses that are designed to get to give people another year really to boost the skills. So you do get an H&C at the end of it, but they're all focused really on getting you into a drama school or a conservatoire, and it's had really good success. Obviously, not only students from that course come onto the Arden, but they also go on to other schools, London drama schools, Central, and so on. So it's had really good success on that course. And sometimes what happens is we may get students who apply for our 3-year course, and we feel like they've got so much potential, but they could just do with another year of intensive training. So we will always recommend that course if we feel that. Our 3-year courses, the 5 that I mentioned just before, they're all sort of designed in the same way. So our first year is what we call process. And within that year, you're doing a lot of technical development. So it's really intensive. We have around about 30 plus contact hours a week in each of our courses, really. And it's all about keeping those skills going that you've developed in college and then just progressing them. So the first year is all about really developing that process and the technical skills. And there's one of our rooms in Nichols' house, one of our wonderful workshop rooms. The second year is what we like to call challenges, or it's a project year, really. So what you're doing is you're taking all of those skills that you gained in first year and you developed, and you're putting them into practice in sort of mini challenges. So for instance, on theatre and performance, they do a schools tour. So they devise a piece of work and take it to loads of different schools. On dance and performance, they do a site-specific project. So last year they did a dance piece in the art gallery and had to respond to the stimuli around them in the art gallery. And on musical theatre, there's loads of mini projects that, mini musicals that they do. And for instance, on vocal studies, there's a cabaret performance and things like that, and acting, Shakespeare performances and so on. So it's really just putting those skills that you learn in year 1 to real practice in your second year. There's one of our dance shows, and Joe in the middle there. And the final year is what we call your professional year. So we really sort of expect you to be behaving like a professional in that year. Each year we feel steps up a gear in terms of the expectations, but this final year is obviously the most important, because ultimately we want you to go out into the industry. So in your professional year, you will work with a lot of external professionals who come in and do projects with you. So for instance, on dance, we have an external international choreographer who comes in and works with the students on a dance piece. On musical theatre, we have external West End directors coming in, working with the students, and same on all the courses. Every course is designed in exactly the same way. This particular piece was a theatre and performance piece with an external theatre company. And obviously the students really raised their game in that third year, because they've had us for 2 years, and then when that external person comes in and that sort of chance to really start to build your reputation with outside people, we really find it sort of steps up. And in all courses there's a showcase element to industry. So that might be on musical theatre and acting, we go down to London and we do a showcase in the West End, for instance. On theatre and performance, they do a theatre festival, so they invite loads of industry practitioners to that. So there's loads of opportunities in your third year to get yourself out there, get yourself seen by industry and network. If it's appropriate for your course, so for instance, acting and musical theatre, it tends to be appropriate to try and find an agent who can sort of take you on to that next level in your career. And we have a really strong success rate of people getting agents through their industry showcases. It's usually the average. We haven't had the figures just yet from our latest year, but usually it's around about 90% of students end up with an agent when they leave. So here's just a couple of breakdowns and recaps. So as I mentioned, we have on average 30 hours of contact. That could go up to 40 hours if you're doing a show, in terms of the our shows are full-time expectations. You're typically in Monday to Friday, 9 to 6. It depends on the course, but most courses do that. It's what we would call conservatoire training, which means it's very practical. Although there's an academic underpinning, you do, and we would say it's 80% practical in terms of what you do. We have professional standards and expectations. So, for instance, in year 1 and 2, we expect students to wear blacks, uniform blacks almost, so that to create a neutral playing field. Once you get to your 3rd year, because we are trying to establish a more professional environment, you don't have to wear blacks anymore. We also have strict sort of time policies, so you have to be there on time, because at the end of the day, we're a collaborative environment, and we need students to be there and present at all times and be professional. So we do like to think that we uphold strong professional standards. And we also have a dedicated student support service, which is called Future You. So if you sign up to UCEN, it's part of UCEN. And the Future You can take you right from application in terms of getting your finance sorted, if you're struggling with any aspect of your finance, if you need to look into certain bursaries that are available. And also, we then, once you're here on campus, we have a student experience team and a mentor team. And so if anyone's struggling with any sort of mental health or sort of low-level anxiety, we can refer them to our student experience team, and they can engage with you on a daily basis, and they can also refer you to our counselling service as well. So we've got quite a strong support network around the students, not just the teaching side of things. Obviously, you've just met me and Andrew today, but we do have quite a large faculty of teachers. One of the great things about our teachers is they've all worked and are still working in industry today. So I'll just try and point a few out with my mouse. So this is Tim. Tim's head of 3rd year musical theatre. He's our musical theatre director, and he has done so many musicals throughout his career. He was just on the production of Mame last year, so he's still doing it, but he's an Olivier Award-winning actor. He's worked on Broadway and the West End. Point out a few more. Graham here, he recently joined us last year. Graham was in the recent tour of Legally Blonde as an actor, but he's also one of our musical directors. Simon over here has recently worked for the Royal Shakespeare Company. Marie is out filming today, but I couldn't get what the project that she was working on. Robert Purvis, our musical director, has conducted so many shows over the years in the West End, so including Phantom of the Opera, which is sadly just announced, the closure just been announced. I got the pleasure of going to watch Phantom with Robert in January on our showcase. So yeah, we've got a real talented bunch of teachers with us. Paul Broughton, where is he? Can I see him? This is Paul. He was in a show called Brookside for many years, which was a soap set in Liverpool. And he recently filmed a Channel 5 series. So we gave Paul 12 weeks sabbatical last year to go and film. So we try and encourage our teachers to really stay active within the industries. Wayne here, who's the course leader for theatre performance, has just got our Arts Council funding to make a film, which is really cool. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say who it's for yet, so I won't reveal that. But so as you can see, we've got a really talented bunch of teachers to teach you and pass on those industry expectations and knowledge to you. And here's a couple of our graduates. So this is Saoirse, who is in a show called Derry Girls, which is on Netflix and Channel 4, in case you haven't seen it. It's really funny. You should. Alex Okawampa, who was recently in the Motown tour and is off to Tina, the musical in the West End next. This is Georgina, who is a professional dancer now. She was on the dance course, and this is her out on contract. Ayanda, who's another dancer, she does a lot of work with the Royal Exchange Company now since graduating. Josh Dowen, lying down there, he was in the most recent tour of American Idiot. Thomas Vanal on the right, he plays the general in the current Book of Mormon international tour. Alex Williams on the left, he's done loads of things since he's graduated, Netflix and CBBC, but this is him in Hollyoaks. He had a sort of special part in a far right sort of plot against Ray Quinn, I think. Richie there in the middle, he's on tour in Australia. He was a theatre performance graduate. Bonnie in the middle there, she's in Hong Kong at the moment as a featured performer in one of their shows. Joe, who is a dance graduate, has just recently been signed by the Wales National Ballet, which is just amazing. And here's a couple more of our students who've been working overseas on ships or abroad on, holiday parks and so on. So plenty of students out there working. Sadly, they've probably come home now because of COVID. But Chris McElvenny was our Spotlight Prize finalist in 2019. So if you are not aware, as I mentioned before, Spotlight, which is the casting network for professionals, as we are at a graduate school, we're allowed to submit a student for their prize. And out of, I think they have about 90 graduate schools, and they pick 20 actors. And we've been lucky enough to have 3 students in it. So we originally had a student in 2017, Kieran. Last year we had Chris, and this year we have Kelsey. So it's a really, I think that shows the strength of the acting course, really, that it's these students go on to compete in well, not really compete, but are showcased in a really, prestigious showcase down in London with loads of top casting directors, amongst the likes of students from RADA and Central and so on. So that's about it. In terms of applying and auditioning, you make your applications through UCEN Manchester. So as I said before, we are part of UCEN Manchester. We make up part of that. Our course fees for 3-year courses are 8,900. Or 1-year courses are 7,000, or HNCs, HNDs. And pretty much all of our courses require an audition. However, unlike some drama schools, we don't ask for an audition fee. So we used to charge an audition fee like a lot of drama schools, but we decided to drop that because we wanted to really sort of open up drama school training for everybody. And it's already, a burden of cost in terms of travel and so on. And we actually made the Stage headlines when we announced that. The Stage is our industry newspaper. We've been lucky enough to feature in there a couple of times. Here's a couple more. So we were featured in the Drama Training Outside of London article, and also the best places to train for screen acting as well. And just most recently, we were delighted in the National Student Survey to get overall 98% overall satisfaction from our students. Our acting course received 96% overall satisfaction, and our musical theatre course received 100% satisfaction this year, which was amazing. Our acting course has received 100% satisfaction, quite a lot, so they couldn't keep that going, I don't think, forever. But we're really, really pleased with that. Our other courses, I should say, are not actually eligible for NSS because they're quite recently, they've been sort of, you need a certain amount of students to take the survey in order to do it. And on our theatre performance and dance performance courses, our 3rd years are quite small at the moment, so they've only got about 12 in the year. Our student numbers generally are quite low, so you'll always be in a group size of around about 15 or 16 or less. But we may take 2 groups in that year, so there may be 30 students in a year, but they're split into groups. And lastly, I'll just mention accommodation, because I get asked this question a lot. So this is where the Arden is, and this is the city centre of Manchester over here, Piccadilly Station. And we sort of recommend, it's up to the student really, it's personal preference, but we recommend a couple of places for students to stay that are in the vicinity. And that's merely so that when you obviously come here and you're you can make friends quite quickly because you're living together, and it's quite nice to have that social aspect as well. And these places are around about a sort of 20-minute walk into Arden in the morning. So that's about it for the overview of the courses. I'll switch this presentation off now. I'm happy to take any questions.
That's great, thanks Rob. So yeah, we're going to now take some questions from you all. I'll read these out, and between yourself, you and Andrew can let me know who's wanting to answer them. Okay, so the first question is, what dance experience do I need to apply? Who wants to take that one?
It depends on the course, really. Does it say a course, or?
We've not specified a course. Maybe we can. I
can give an overview. So on, for instance, musical theatre, that is what we call a triple threat course. So we expect, students to have strong acting, dance, and singing skills. It really depends. I think we do expect a certain level of technique when you apply, because we have a certain baseline that everyone sort of applies to. In dance and performance, however, it might be you're really strong in some aspects of your dance, like your contemporary dance, and that may be seen as a real strength, and then you have potential in other areas. But yeah, so we do expect a fair amount. Also, we do find that boys tend to not have as much dance experience generally, and so we're looking for potential, really. Andrew, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, can I add to that as well, in the sense that we also on musical theatre stream our dance classes. So you might find that you're really experienced in, say, ballet and jazz, but you may not have done as much tap before. So we do have that option that you could be really pushed and challenged in your ballet and jazz, but you then could, be working at a more basic level to learn the basics of tap, because that's your weaker discipline within musical theatre. So obviously it is important, I think, to have some experience within technique, but we do have the option to push you in any disciplines that you may feel you're not as experienced in.
That's a really good point. And also on something like musical theatre, if you've got 2 out of 3 real strengths, your acting and your singing is really, really strong, and you've got potential in dance, but your technique is maybe not as strong, we will always look to, see if we can offer you a place there. And as Andrew said, we would stream our dance on musical theatre, so that our sort of more experienced dancers are pushed to their limits, and people who need that technique are pushed as well.
That's great, thank you. I think that might lead on to this next question. What if I'm unsure of the path I want to go down, e.g. tap or alarm?
That's a really good question. The great thing about applying what I would say is you apply to one where you feel you sit the most, but you'll have that conversation anyway, and our team are really good at recognising where you would fit. So say if you auditioned for the alarm course, or the what we call the acting or alarm course, and they felt that actually your strengths would be better served on the theatre performance course, they would make that recommendation. And so you don't need to apply necessarily to multiple courses and use all of your UCAS choices up. Same on dance and musical theatre. So if you apply to musical theatre, and you're a really strong dancer, we may refer you to the dance course as well. So the referrals can sort of cross different courses.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. Couple of questions about auditions here. So how many applicants do you take in for audition, and what's involved in the audition process?
Does it mention a course, or?
It doesn't.
No. Okay. Each course has a slightly different process, but on average, we see hundreds of students in a year, and each course has a maximum of 30 places. So obviously it's quite a competitive environment, and our auditions are really friendly. We're not sort of elitist or snooty in our auditions, when people come, and I think that's one thing that makes people want to come to the Arden is the sort of friendly atmosphere that they're sort of met with at audition. In all courses, you'll do something that's specific to that you know, medium. So for instance, dance, you'll have an intensive day of different dance auditions, and you'll be expected to do, you know, a piece of choreography. But on musical theatre, you're taught a piece of choreography, and you'll be expected to sing, and you'll be expected to do a monologue. Vocal studies, you're expected to sing some contrasting songs and have an interview. So each one's slightly tailored. Acting, we have a screen test, and then we ask you to do a Shakespeare monologue of a set text that we will send you when you apply. But this is all given to you well in advance of your audition. And there's some information on our website as well, and in the brochure, just the basics of it. But you'll get that well in advance what you need to prepare.
Can I jump in as well and say that on the acting course at Alarm, Acting for Live and Recorded Media and Musical Theatre, we do have recalls as well. So we may see you for a provisional audition, and then what we will do from that is then invite people back to a recall, you know, just to give everybody a fair chance. So in some places, just because you're one of the first people seen in an audition process might give you an advantage. Well, we don't like that. We like to see everybody and give everybody a fair chance before we invite people back to recall, especially on the courses that have got higher numbers, which is acting and musical theatre.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Another question here is, how do you plan to teach this academic year?
Good question. Well, up until Christmas, we've changed our timetable a little bit to accommodate, obviously, COVID-19 sort of safeguarding. So we're hoping that we'll have students, you know, we are timetabling students to be in the building as much as possible, but obviously we have to ensure safety as well and sort of volume numbers. So the way we're timetabling at the moment, that each course has their own designated spaces. So each course will have a larger workshop space. They'll have some break-off spaces, and we're timetabling really creatively to maximise the use of those spaces, basically. And everything is risk assessed. So there may be a tiny bit online in terms of your theory lessons or stuff we can deliver online without it having a detrimental effect. But where we're doing things like dance, you know, we haven't fully timetabled dance yet, I'd say, but I would imagine that's going to be, the majority of it will be in the building, and we may have to extend opening hours. We'll have to have staggered start times, staggered end times for students so that they don't cross over. So it is a real jigsaw puzzle, but we've had a lot of experience of this now in terms of timetable, and we're sure that we're confident we're going to have a good experience. And then, as I say, we are aiming in terms of that first winter term to be like that, and then we can hopefully open it up and sort of go back to what our normal approach would be. And we've changed a couple of things around so that, for instance, we've swapped a couple of things around in terms of semester delivery so that nothing's compromised, you know, in terms of student shows and productions and things like that. We may focus on smaller group work to begin with. We're still waiting on singing advice from the government in terms of what, you know, the safest ways to do that. So all of this is risk assessed, and the risk assessment is continuously being refined. So yeah, I mean, I hope that answers the question in a way. I would say that, you know, the majority of classes will be online, but we will be in face-to-face, and just the small minority of theory classes and certain things that we can do online will be up until Christmas, and then we can review it. I don't know if you want to say anything on that, Andrew.
No, I just think, as I said, the same point, we've been very mindful of the assessments and things like any duet work, quartet work, we may prioritise in this first semester so that there's not large groups all in one space at one particular time for singing and things like that. But yeah, anything we can do online with no detriment, we can put online, but I think the majority of stuff, as Rob said, you know, we're a performing arts institution, so we're going to need a lot of that face-to-face time in the building.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of answers quite a few questions that have popped up about contact hours and how the classes will be organised in September, so that's really helpful, thank you. Another question here is, why would I choose to do a HNC instead of a degree?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I mentioned before, the HNC is a 1-year course, but it's more designed, although it is technically a level 4 qualification, so it is technically a first year of a degree qualification. They are used as a stepping stone to do a practical, a drama school degree, essentially. So you may find that you apply to lots of different schools, and it's not uncommon for students to not get in anywhere in their first year. I mean, people who go to drama school sometimes have, you know, it's their 2nd year of auditioning, it could even be their 3rd year of auditioning as well. And some of those students, instead of taking a gap year, they decide to do an HNC because do an HNC course like ours, which is treated as a bit of a foundation year, really, and they get that intensive work, you know, in terms of the year, and the tutors on that course are really experienced in getting those students. They know the requirements essentially of getting into drama school, and sometimes it may be that people have just not had the right. They may be really talented and they've just made slightly odd choices for their audition, and they've not maybe had someone there experienced enough to advise them. And that's what that HNC course really does. They're really experienced at getting students into drama school. Basically, they have a very high success rate. I mean, I haven't got the figures on me, but I would say it's, you know, 90 to 100% of those students go on to either the Arden or, like, you know, in drama schools in London and so on. So it's not necessarily a choice of whether you would do the HNC or do a degree. A lot of our students would apply for the degree and then maybe referred to an HNC, or they may feel they're not ready for the degree, so they're going to do the HNC. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and I think it might help with this question. How can I prepare for September and prepare for my course ahead of September? Again, there's no specified course.
Okay. So, well, we've sent every student a welcome pack, and so if you haven't received that, contact Isabel, and we'll make sure you get hold of that. And in the welcome pack, it has things like, you know, the equipment that you should be getting ready. It has a couple of books that you should, you know, you could read over the summer just to sort of get yourself in the mindset. So each course has a couple of texts to sort of prepare you. It's not, you know, compulsory. Some courses say it is compulsory, actually, I think. But so it and they just give you that level of understanding when you come in. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Andrew, in terms of preparation.
I mean, I would say, especially with disciplines like singing and probably dance, it's try and keep active in those disciplines as much as you can over the summer. So rather than starting almost, as we might say, with a cold voice in September, you know, really keep your voice warm, really keep practicing, really keep, you know, going with those skills over summer. Don't just don't just stop for 6 weeks and then start afresh, because you want your instrument to still be warm and ready when you start. So I would say keep your discipline going. From an acting point of view, you could still keep going with monologues and stuff like that and keep your practice going, keep action in those monologues, getting in your head how you prepare. And, you know, I would just say keep practicing and keep up on it.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And also there's so much online at the moment, you know, in terms of material that you can absorb. You should be just absolutely devouring that theatrical material, watching as many TV. I mean, obviously keeping your instrument going, keeping your fitness and your stamina up as well. But you could be, you know, I'm sure you are already binging the whole of Netflix, but don't just be binging, I don't know, Queer Eye on Netflix. Find stuff that is like, can enhance your practice as an actor or, you know, as a performer. Not to diss Queer Eye, because I love it, by the way. But.
That's great, thank you. There's a question here, is there any crossover on courses? So can people try a couple of different things on any of the courses?
Each course does a bit of everything. In terms of, you know, I saw another another question about, is there any dance on the acting course, for instance? And there is some dance on the acting course. So there's dance on every, you know, there's a little bit of dance on every course. I think, you know, even vocal studies, theatre and performance, maybe not. They do more movement. Each course has singing on it, for instance, and so on. So like all the students kind of get a quite balanced set of skills, and we occasionally do crossover projects, but it's not sort of part of the curriculum. So we have in the past done joint projects between the year groups and between the courses. So for instance, we've done a play which had actors from all, you know, theatre performance, from acting, from musical theatre, for instance, but that's not necessarily part of what we offer. It's just if we find the right time to do something, then we do that. I'll just mention on the contact hours, due to COVID, those contact hours, we're looking to keep the same hours. So whether, you know, whether that will be, you have to do some of it online or whatever, in terms of the theory lessons, but we're trying to keep the majority of what we can do before Christmas, you know, as we were saying, face to face. But yeah, so it's not going to be, you know, dramatic changes in hours, I don't think.
Great, thank you. We've got another question here. How much of the assessment for BA Musical Theatre is written work?
Good question. Yeah, we have, so in all of the courses, we're degrees, we're degree levels. So we're module based. We have 6 modules as part of each year, and generally one of those modules is sort of what we would say, you know, is the academic strand that runs through. So you've got 1 out of 6 modules, but the rest of the modules are very practical. So we sort of say as sort of borderline, it's 80% practical, 20% written work. I don't know what you think, Andrew.
I was going to say, excuse me, I do agree with that. But what I would say as well is that even in that academic strand, we do try and keep the assessments and the work as practical as we can. So you might get presentations as a form of assessment. You might have a viva voce where it's a question and answer. There could even be debate that's brought up. So it's not necessarily all written all the time. There could be other ways of showing that academic work that goes on. So it's just to make that aware as well, that yes, we do have this academic strand, but we do understand with a lot of performers there is this, you know, you prefer to perform and you prefer to actually be practical with your assessments, and we try and keep that in mind as well. I mean, obviously there will be some written work, but we are mindful that you know, we do get better results from the more practical assessments.
And even in your third year, your dissertation, you can actually perform that. I mean, you can choose to write your dissertation, but you can actually just choose to do a 30-minute performance and a viva voce as well, which quite a lot of students like the sound of if you don't like writing, but don't think you should be scared of writing at the same time. But yeah, there's not, like Andrew said, you know, all of our academic lecturers are performers as well, and they're very experienced in presenting academic argument through performance. So it's not that we're not necessarily underpinning the academic theory with, you know, the work and, you know, avoiding any kind of academia whatsoever. But we, you know, there's not as much writing as you might think. Do we go and see shows as part of the course? Yes, and you should be, you know, doing that every week, I think. Different courses have different sort of outlooks on this. Theatre and performance, for instance, because their sort of genre of theatre, it's quite affordable. So, you know, if you're going to watch contemporary theatre quite a lot, you can get, you know, £5 tickets, £10 tickets at, you know, our local theatres like Home and the Royal Exchange and Contact. and so they regularly organise trips. Obviously, musical theatre, it's a little bit more expensive. You know, it's like upwards of £40, £30, £40. So we do go and see that, but we tend to find that students are doing that anyway. They're constantly at the theatre, and a lot of them work at the theatre, so they're seeing the shows. But we encourage students to go and see as many shows as possible. And then obviously we have our own shows, and students get a huge discount on the tickets to go and see those shows, our in-house shows and stuff like that. Are there any videos of past student work to watch? Good question. If you go on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Arden School, obviously with the pandemic, we did a lot of things online. You know, there are some musical theatre performances, there's an acting monologue slam, there's some theatre performance stuff. So depending on what you're interested, have a look at some of the videos, and obviously depending on what subject you're interested in, have a look.
Perfect, thank you. Let's have a look. You answered the question about the dance on the tap course, so that's really helpful. I know that you mentioned earlier that I think you said there was 30 places on each of the courses, is that right? Yeah,
approximately. Some courses take slightly less, some courses take slightly more. So musical theatre, I think, takes usually takes around about 32, whereas acting takes about 28. So it averages out at 30, but there's sort of that number that we sort of aim for each course. I know someone asked about stage combat in acting. It is taught through the movement strand, I believe, but and in the past we've also put on additional courses that students can gain qualifications in that, but it's not something that we hugely focus on in terms of stage combat. But we do have a regular person who comes in and offers courses in that if students want to top up their skills. So yeah, someone mentioned about the acting course, and is there still an opportunity to do some dance? I think I mentioned that before, that there is some dance opportunity, but it's not a huge amount if you are a dancer. Having said that, there are a lot of dance houses in Manchester that offer really good prices to students in the evenings, and also our own students sometimes stay behind in the studio spaces and offer classes to their peers and so on, and they advertise that on our internal groups. So for instance, some of the dance students may say, oh, I'm going to hold a class next week, feel free to come along in the evening and do it. So there's things like that going on as well.
That's great, thank you. When can students expect their timetables through?
It's a good question. We normally wouldn't. We would normally only give you your timetable the first week you get here, and there's several reasons for that. I mean, sometimes students will ask, oh, you know, I'm looking for jobs and things like that, and we can give you a rough idea between, you know, well, this course is operating these hours and it has a Friday afternoon off. For instance, we can maybe give you that level of detail, but partly the reason is, as I mentioned earlier, we split the year into 2 groups, and therefore that's based, it's not just a random split. In your induction week, we meet you, some courses do workshops with you, and they decide the dynamic split of the year. And then other courses, for instance, musical theatre, we're looking at splits in terms of vocal types. So we need to make sure that we have a variety of vocal types, you know, from soprano, alto, baritone, and so on in each group. So there's that aspect to it. But, you know, we can definitely give you an insight into what hours you will be expected. But by the time of enrolment, I would imagine, which is sort of end of August, we'll be able to give you that sort of detail. So yeah, get in touch with us then. Great, there was a question about vocal studies just above that. Andrew, can you see that? I don't know if you want to answer it.
I can't see where you're seeing these questions.
Right. Is there any opportunity to sing classical on the vocal and performance course?
Absolutely, 100%. The whole, as Rob was saying earlier, one of the main things that we look at on vocal studies and performance is this exploration of genre of voice. So obviously we like musical theatre, but then pop, rock, but then also any genre, so classical. For instance, one of our one-to-one teachers, Gavin, has done a lot of work with Opera North, and he's obviously trained from that classical opera background, so he would be more than willing to work with anybody that wants to really focus on some classical singing. So we definitely have that, and with vocal studies as well, we look at biology of voice, and we look at how you can use your voice to create different genres and different styles. So obviously within the vocal biology, we look at classical singing, we look at how you get that classical tone and what your vocal setup would be for that. So as I said, vocal studies is really that exploration of genre, and especially within the first year is getting you to try different genres with your voice that maybe you've never tried before, because you may find that there's a style out there that you've never tried that you really love and end up wanting to pursue further. But yes is the short answer.
Thank you. What are the rules wearing makeup when you're on campus and on courses?
Good question. So as I said before, we have sort of professional expectations, and we do ask students to wear black uniform in years 1 and 2. When I say uniform, it's not uniform, wear black clothes, and we have a set things that you should be wearing. And yeah, makeup, in our handbook, the policy is minimal makeup. So we don't want, everyone should be coming in with a level playing ground. So it is about neutrality, and so it's very minimal makeup. No sort of long nails and things like that. No, if you have piercings, depending on the course, acting, for instance, would want you to be very, very neutral. Whereas theatre performance is a little bit more about your identity, so they may allow certain piercings and things like that, but generally makeup is minimal.
Great, thank you. What kind of things do we need to do in order to prepare for a HNC acting course?
Similar to what I said before in terms of and what Andrew said about keeping your skills up. If you're on the HNC acting course, the idea is hopefully that you want to progress onto further study. So you should be using that time now to your advantage and really, reading loads of different plays so that you can get a really nice monologue for if you're going to go and apply to drama school, things like that. There's so much you can be doing, but it's just about being proactive. And if you haven't had, we have a welcome pack for HNC as well. So if you haven't had that, email us and we'll send it out. It might have a bit more info in it in terms of what you need to do.
Yeah, definitely. We've popped our email address in the Q&A box for everyone as well. What kind of support is there for people with dyslexia, or just in general, what kind of support services are there available to the students?
Okay, so we have a Future You support, which is part of the package that UCEN offers, and within that we have support for dyslexia and so on. I would be really clear about this in terms of the support that you get when you go to university level education to when you're at college. It's very different. So the onus is a lot more on the student to get that assessment done. So if you haven't already got a dyslexia assessment as part of your previous college, bring that with you. And there may be, you would have to apply for DSA, which is the support by the government. And they would then, potentially provide you with, they would look at your assessment and potentially provide you things like a laptop, the gels that you may need, and so on. In terms of how the curriculum support you, we're quite happily happy to provide things on whatever coloured paper students want, give students material as far in advance as we can, and so on. And it depends on the university's regulations in terms of dyslexia, what they can get in terms of support with their assessments and stuff like that. But if you do have a need such as that, I would highly advise you sort of looking into that now, so that you can see what funding you can get from the government. We can sort of facilitate that once you get here, but it's a really long process. So I would start it before you arrive.
I would also say there are some options that we do anyway, like things like printing on different coloured papers and things like that, that we would put in place anyway, and give any student the option of that, regardless of a DSA or anything. So it would be a case of really letting your head of year, so you get a head of year who is again a little bit like a tutor, I guess, a year tutor, who will be able to then obviously signpost you in the right direction when you get here, but also take any sort of learning difficulties through to the curriculum team, who will be able to, as much as we can support you, we will. But as Rob was saying, if you want that even further support, then it needs to be statemented. But we're very used to printing on, as I said, different coloured paper for sheet music or for scripts or for anything, as if that helps.
Great, thank you so much. We've got a question here. On the dance course, are there any opportunities to gain ISTD teaching qualifications?
The short answer is no. It's not part of the course. It is part of the HNC dance course, I believe, but there's so much going on in that degree as it is that the opportunity is just not there. There is a teaching module on the dance performance course where you will go and you will get some experience, and you may do a small placement in terms of that module where you have for your assessment, but there isn't, unfortunately, the opportunity to get the ISTD qual.
Great, thank you. Another question here is, are there any extracurricular activities, and if so, would you recommend taking these as part on like a side to your course?
So as part of UCEN, there are societies forming every year. If you have a particular interest in launching a society, you can even get funding for that. There are certain societies already available. Off the top of my head, for instance, there's a football society. They meet and play football. It depends on what your interests are, and when you arrive in your induction week, the student union will show you how, like, the different societies that you can sort of join. At the moment, with UCEN being sort of in different campuses, so we're at Nichols, so we're quite close to the city centre, but then we have students in Fielden campus, and they're all the way over, Didsbury. So sometimes it's difficult for students to partake in different societies if they're based on different campuses, but there's no reason why you can't. But there's quite a big social side at the Arden anyway, in terms of outside of the course.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a question here. Do you automatically refer degree applicants who are not successful to the HNC courses?
So no is the answer to that. So unfortunately, some people, it's not an automatic referral. So if you have gained a place on an HNC, it's because we feel that within a year you have the potential to progress, basically. So we have at Audition, we have a criteria system. We have like a grading system almost. And so if you're just underneath the benchmark, then we would typically refer you to the HNC. But if you're too far below the benchmark, then we wouldn't make that referral. Are one-to-one singing lessons offered on the MT course? Yes, is the answer to that. So you'll get a half-an-hour singing lesson every week with an assigned teacher, and that teacher stays with you throughout your time at the Arden. So in years 1 and 2, that's a weekly lesson. And then in third year, because your time is so full on, it's your professional year and you're doing shows and you're on call times with directors and things like that, we operate a booking system on third year, so you can book in with any of the singing teachers that you want, or musical directors who are available, you know, at that time of the week. And, you know, it's up to you to manage your singing lessons then. You know, it's like going into the real world. You will have to then do that. So it's a little bit preparing you for the real world as well. And on vocal studies, we offer an hour lesson, don't we, Andrew? I think.
Yeah, 1 hour a week, 1-to-1 on vocal studies for first and second year, and then I would imagine it would be the same thing in third year, where we would do like a booking system within third year to get your lessons. I think the really good thing as well to point out with the booking system and with third years taking sort of more control, you will find throughout your time, you might find different singing teachers have different specialties. Like I mentioned earlier, Gavin is sort of fully trained within the classical side, so you might find that you want to work on different repertoire with different teachers that may have a specialist study area within those particular fields. I like working a lot with contemporary and with belt, for instance, so I may work with contemporary belt singers, whereas Gavin may look at more opera and stuff like that. So third years get that chance to almost get the best of you know, who we've got here in the department to really push your skills on. So I think that's an enormous sort of plus for us, is the fact that you do have that sort of support there for any sort of genre you want to push yourself in.
That's great, thank you. And I think, Andrew, you might have mentioned this a little bit earlier, but in the musical theatre course, how much music theory and how much is of your own creation and projects, etc.?
Yeah, so I mean, music theory within the musical theatre course is under a sort of a class that we call general musicianship, and that is predominantly there just to get you up to the ability to read basic sheet music. For instance, when you go into rehearsals and stuff like that, and you're given a piece of sheet music, what are you looking at? If you're given those dots, what do those dots mean on a page? So the focus of that general musicianship is to get people up to that stage that you can do that and potentially sight read some music. It's the general musicianship class is 1 hour a week that you will get that support. Within vocal studies, it's the same sort of thing. It's about bringing people up to more like that grade 5 music theory standard, hopefully eventually, by looking at you know, the basic fundamentals of music theory. We are potentially looking at streaming those classes as well going forward between musical theatre and vocal studies to really push people again. But yeah, there is that music theory embedded into both musical theatre and into vocal studies and performance.
And just on creation of projects, your own creation of projects, there is so much happening on the musical theatre course. On every course, to be honest, that there's a lot of, you know, facilitation of students allowing their own sort of creation. So, but musical theatre, for instance, they do a devised musical, so they create their own musical within about 5 weeks, a fully fledged musical, where everyone is sort of can do whatever they want in that, whether they want to choreograph or compose or direct. But within the sort of smaller scale projects as well, the students are often, for instance, in dance, instead of just in second year dance, there is a choreography element to it. So again, you're sort of stretching your own technique, but also you may have to devise a ballet piece based around a fairy tale story or something like that, and you'd have to find your own music, edit it, and with a small group of students, you'd choreograph it together. So there's quite a lot of creation happening on. I think there's just the right balance actually, because you obviously you don't want to be devising constantly, because you want some direction from your teachers at the end of the day. So there's a good balance of you know, of allowing students their own creative projects, but also giving them some direction in order to sort of scaffold their progression. I saw the next one. If a tutor takes a sabbatical, how do you ensure continuity for students? It's a good question. I would say don't panic. You know, tutors are not leaving us left, right, and centre to do work. So obviously Andrew and I are the sort of management of the Arden, and a tutor will come to us well in advance if they have a really good project they want to do. So for instance, I mentioned Paul Broughton wanting to take 12 weeks off to film. We planned that, you know, so there was no disruption. So as I sort of mentioned as well, we work in module form. So you may do a project on naturalistic acting, and then you may go and do a project on introduction to camera, and you may go on to do stage acting. So there are different modules, and we would not disrupt a module to allow a teacher to go off and do something. It's only if we can really, as the question says, ensure continuity. So in Paul's case, it was perfect timing, really. So we had the Christmas break, and then Paul was able to go and do filming. And in Paul's replacement, we got, because we, you know, have a lot of industry contacts, we got a lady called Karen Henthorne, who is a Coronation Street actress, teaching acting for camera. So it just worked perfectly. You know, we were able to do it. Sometimes we do have to say to teachers, sorry, we're not going to be able to do that, because the students' experience is our priority. But at the same time, we can see the advantages sometimes of teachers doing that. So we would always ensure that. So don't worry about it too much. For instance, when Tim Flavin on musical theatre, he went and did MAME, but he was able to rehearse that in the summer period, and then he was actually teaching in the days and going doing performances in the night. So it didn't affect any teaching. Yeah, so we do the continuity for the students is the priority.
And I think I want to echo what Rob said. I think the fact that, you know, our tutors are working in industry, that means we do have a lot of industry contacts. So if we had to find a replacement, you can be guaranteed that the replacement will be somebody from industry with knowledge that will be brought in to cover that particular period of time. And normally be somebody that is familiar with the work of that tutor that has to have gone off as well. But as Rob said, that, you know, disruption to students is always our priority, is making sure that would never disrupt your learning.
Tutors going off like that, that doesn't happen very often, but it was kind of, it just worked out perfectly. How much emphasis do we put on personal statements, and do you think auditions will be virtual for next year? I think it's probably different teams have different views on personal statements. I mean, I find it really hard with a personal statement to really get to know the student, because you're trying to cover all bases sometimes, and that, you know, it's really difficult. I would say just do the best you can in your personal statement, and if you can mention any additional things you can do outside of your study that make you stand out in terms of being you know, if you do any volunteer work or what, if you've got any unusual hobbies and things like that, rather than, you know, saying, oh, my dream is to be an actor and all of that kind of malarkey. Focus on what makes you a more rounded individual in your personal statement. In terms of auditions being virtual next year, to be honest, we haven't really got that far. We're still trying to make sure we're ready for September. But in one way, what worked really well in terms of some auditions was the self-tape of the students. So like in terms of musical theatre and acting, self-tape actually worked for the first round of the audition, but then we would still have loved to have met students in person. So I don't know is the answer really. I mean, we would probably, you know, ultimately we want to see every student face to face before they start. So
I mean, it may be that this year, depending on advice or whatever, you might find for things like acting and musical theatre, you may do your first round virtual or something, and then we bring you all back in for the recall. Potentially, we don't know, because obviously that would happen later on in the year when hopefully we could move back into a more sort of normal, as far as it will go, normal audition process. I do think that we found the interviews worked really well as well, even online, because we could have multiple interview panels in that, staff members in the interview. So I think having interviews online actually worked really well for us this year as well. And we found out a lot, and we really got to know you through conversation. And going back to the personal statement thing, comment, I would also say that the interviews are probably, for me personally, just as important as those personal statements. That what you say in your interview is how we get to know you.
Yeah. Well, I should stress that we haven't actually reflected on auditions at all. You know, we're sort of reflecting out loud right now, because we've been so busy risk assessing for September and making sure the timetables are going to be all right and things like that. So once we get to September, we'll probably make the decision on auditions.
Absolutely.
That's great, thank you. And I think the last couple of questions are all about the audition process. So I think you guys have kind of answered that definitely, and we'll just wait to see what find out. If
you download our subject brochure from the UCEN website, it does have the basics of what makes up each audition. I think there's a page dedicated to it. So it'll just give you a very brief sentence or two on what you sort of do. But then once you actually apply, we'll send you a proper audition pack. So if you go onto the UCEN website and check that out, and shall we answer that last one? Is there any important things that you would like us to remember from this call? Yeah, it's a great last question to end with. I think, as we kind of sort of, stressed before, in terms of what you can be doing now to prepare for September, and for me, that is just absorbing all of the material online. If you haven't seen Pearson Castings, if you know of them, they are doing daily free lessons with industry professionals right now. Like, you could be doing those every day for free, and you could then, in your evenings, be reading plays. You could be watching certain dramas on Netflix with really great actors in. You could be watching some classic films. Look at, do some research, or try and really broaden yourselves. And as Andrew was saying before as well, don't just sort of sit about and relax. You should be doing your vocal regime every day, still practicing. You should be improving your stamina and keeping your technique going as best as you can. Don't know if you want to add anything, Andrew. Sorry, I covered quite a lot there. I think you've hit it all. Yeah, just remember why you're doing this. Remember what your passion is and why you want to apply for drama school, and use that as your motivation to keep going and keep researching, keep wanting to learn new things all the time. But yeah, this is your passion, so keep going with it. Yeah. Just because you've got a place, the hard work starts now. So you've got to hit the ground running in September. Yeah, that's brilliant. And thank you so much for this session. I think we've got absolutely loads into the last hour. And please do make use of the email addresses we've provided in the Q&A box. If you've got any more questions, just forward them over to us. And other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.